Today on Numbers Geek, we're going to be talking about public education and spending and outcomes. Why is this an important topic for people to think about? Give me your overall thoughts on this, Steve.
I think almost everybody in the country would recognize that education is a propellant of success. Now, education is a couple things. Learning is super important. It makes you better able to do things. But in a way, education is also a measure of how functional your situation is in life. You know, a lot of kids are perfectly smart and able to do the work, but if their parents don't have an opportunity to read to them when they're young, if they're in situations where maybe they have to take care of a baby brother, baby sister, can't get to school on time, if it's unsafe because of gangs, et cetera, to get to school, there's a lot of reasons why people don't achieve in school that reflect not on them per se, not on the teachers per se, but reflect on difficult family circumstances. But either way you cut it, education is the marker of success and the propellant of future success. If you think about huge changes in student-teacher ratio, they really do drive large additional cost. One student, you get one change in the student-teacher ratio, one person, and that'll cost you, tens of billions of dollars. So you really want to be right on this. It's the most expensive decision you could make. The other thing to remember is the student-teacher ratio is not the same as class size. You can get very small classes in, say, subjects like Latin or in special education classes. And if you get very small classes someplace, you're going to get very big classes someplace else. So the averages can be misleading.
Let's actually look at the student-to-teacher ratio as it's happened across K through 12 in public schools in the United States since the 1960s. If you look back to the 1960s, late 1950s, it was as high as 27.4 students per teacher. What do you think about that number?
Well, old 1956 is the year I was born. Let me run out here to about when I first started sitting in classrooms here in about 61, 62. The number there is still, looks like it's about, go there, 61, 26 kids in a class when I was a kindergartner. And the difference between 26 and where are we now, about 16, that's a 40% roughly difference. That means education spend could be down 40%, $280 billion if things were like the good old days. And this math isn't all precise, but it's illustrative. That's a lot of money. I'm not arguing that that's what should happen. I'm not. I do think really thinking through what are the differential needs kids have. Are we paying our teachers enough? All of that will have influence. But we know there were some decent educational outcomes for some people, even with those kinds of student-teacher ratios at that time.
Let's look at some of the outcomes. First, here is the graduation rate. This is the high school graduation rate. It's an interesting metric. It looks at the percentage of the 17-year-old population that graduates. So it's a snapshot. It's a sliver of the population. Talk us through these numbers, Steve.
Yeah, graduation rate, as you can see here, was 71% back in 1980, 71.4. It sort of slithered down a little bit to a floor of 67.5 in 1998, and then rose again to 2013, 81.7%.
So this is an upward trend.
This is an upward trend. Why have we seen an improvement in graduation rate? I can give you lots of reasons. Parents are emphasizing graduation more. The schools are better able to help kids graduate. The kids have more incentive. They see what happens with jobs. The student-teacher ratio improvement is helping kids learn more. That's certainly a possibility. Teacher quality could be going up with teacher pay, another possibility. But there are other possibilities as well. The standard of graduations could be coming down. I am not an expert, and we haven't figured out a USA Facts kind of by the number way to capture graduation standards. And so I think it's also important to look at some of these other factors and then put it all together. Net, we can't be sad this number is up, but we better want to know it's for the right reasons, as opposed to simply conclude that it's all about student-teacher ratios. Now we have to ask what's working, what's not, and try to have a view of what caused this. We can't prove any causality. You can get economists to do massive studies, and for every economist who'll tell you it's this reason, you generally can find an economist who'll tell you it's another reason. We're trying to let people see some numbers and inform their point of view. We do have some helpful numbers like student-teacher ratio, spending, etc. But we also have some interesting data on reading and math proficiency, which gives us at least a clue as to whether this may have something to do with the relaxation of standards.
What are the key trends that stand out to you in math and reading proficiency scores?
Well, let's start with this number that hits me most. Eighth graders, 36% of eighth graders, right here, 36% are proficient in reading at grade level. 36% are proficient in reading in the eighth grade. Only 34% of eighth graders can read or can do math with proficiency in the eighth grade. If you go back to the fourth grade, 37% of fourth graders, only 37%, can read proficiently at the fourth grade level, and 40% of fourth graders can do math proficiently. So my first observation is, whoa, no matter what we're spending on education, we should have more than 33 to 40% of our kids being able to perform at grade level. Now, I'd obviously like to see what these numbers look like for 12th grade. Might be an even more interesting set of numbers than graduation rates, because you would think the goal of schools are to get kids proficient, not just acceptable, but proficient in math and reading. Now, there is some good news. These numbers have come up some over the years. If you go back to 1998 and you look at fourth grade reading, 1997, it has come up from about 26% and then wound up at about 34%. We're getting a little bit better, but we're not getting better fast. And where we are today, to me, is wholly unacceptable. We need to help more kids be able to read and do math at grade level.